Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, and welcome to our lecture in linguistics. First of all, I'm so excited to be with you today to continue our classes in linguistics, and I hope that inshallah in the near future we're gonna meet face to face and come back to our lectures, our classes, our universities, our friends, and our loved ones. Today we're gonna discuss chapter 4, so I want you to get your books now and open your books on page 51, chapter 1, chapter 4, variation in language. Okay, we cannot deny that language, which is that thing that sets us apart from non-humans, and it's a very genuine part of us as human beings, changes from place to place and from time to time. So language changes in two important dimensions: dimension of time and dimension of place. And this is a fact that no one can argue against or refute. We can feel it and we can see it everywhere at all levels, at our personal level, at our institutional level, our national level, etc. So today, this is our title, which is language variation or variation in language. Okay, as I told you before, that language varies in time and space. So let's make this form. As you see here, we have language variation, and we have two axes, the horizontal and the vertical. The horizontal, okay, the horizontal refers to place. Language varies from place to place, from one city to another city, from one village to another village, and we can feel it, we can see it, okay, in our life. And also language varies vertically as far as social variation is concerned. So we find that lower classes speak differently from middle classes, speak differently from upper class speakers. So speakers use language differently according to the social class to which they belong. So please don't forget this. When we talk about variation in language, we talk about two important dimensions: horizontal, place, and vertical social. Social. It has to do with class. It has to do with the social stratification of our community. Okay, this is number 2. Let's focus on geographical variation or regional variation. Okay, we have to say that when we talk about regional variation, we talk about variation from one place to place. And you may ask, why does language change from one place to another place? Maybe speakers inhabiting or living in a particular place, they are surrounded by rivers, by mountains, by lakes, by seas, and so on. And in another place, speakers do not have these things. So the natural surroundings and environmental surroundings affect how we speak language, and this makes variation. For example, if you look at the language of Eskimo languages, you find so many words describing different kinds of ice, because this is a very key part of their life. They are surrounded all the time by ice. So variation in place happened due to lots of things. When the British go to America, they find new environmental, new animals, new places, new people, and so on. And this is why you will find that American English and British English vary to some extent. Okay. In what way do languages or variation happen? In what are the forms that it takes? Number one, grammar. Okay, language varies in grammar. Number two, vocabulary. Okay, words used in a particular place are not necessarily the same used in another place. And number three, which is most important, actually the most important element or variation, is pronunciation. Pronunciation. If a language varies from another language, including the three elements, grammar, vocabulary, and pronunciation, these variations, we call them dialectal variations. We have dialects, you know. So if a dialect, what are the differences between one dialect and another dialect? There must be different in all these three things: grammar, vocabulary, and pronunciation. But suppose that the differences lie only in the third element, which is pronunciation. In this case, we don't have dialectal variations. We don't have different dialects. No, we have accents. So when it comes to pronunciation, variation causes what we call different accents. And every one of us has an accent or speaks in an accent. Whether this accent is regional or non-regional, standard, non-standard, prestigious or not prestigious, in one way or another, we all speak in dialects. Okay, I want you to, in accent, with a particular accent, I want you to go to the book, and the first page. You will find, in order to give you some examples on how dialects vary with regard to three elements: grammar, vocabulary, and pronunciation. Look at the first example, which is number 4.1. We had us a real nice house. We had us a real nice. What's wrong with this, or what's different? It's not a matter of correct or incorrect form. No, it's a matter of acceptability and matter of variation. We find that this kind of expression is used in southern USA, Southern America, and what happens is that they add just us. In other places, they say just we had a real nice house. If you look at the second paragraph, the second example, Shezdinki di Pomichelia. This is an Australian sentence, very colloquial, very informal, and it means that she's a typical English woman. Example number 3, I might could do it. I might could do it. Here we have two modal verbs, might and could. And this example, you will find it in Scotland, in some areas in America, where could, as we see in other accents and in other dialects, we say we might be able to. So here, might and could, it's a weird succession of words, weird collocates, Look at number 4. The last Devon again to the pictures. Here we find this example is used in northern England, and the word last means girl, okay, and the word pictures means movies or cinema. The girl goes to the movies, or the girl goes to the cinema, okay. Also, they are a lovely team anymore. Here we find that double negative, because they should have said they aren't a love team anymore. Here they use only one form of negative. To some people, to use double negative means positive. So they say that the standard form of not plus anymore is not okay. So in some dialects, they use only one form of negative, which is anymore. Okay, and this example is used in some American cities, some American areas, and so on. If you look at the last one, you will find it in Indian English. They say, I'm not knowing where to find a stepney, which is a spare wheel. Spare wheel, you look here, even in Egyptian Arabic we say بدور على استبن. كلمة أظن إن كلمة استبن دي جاية لنا من عندهم برضو، معرفش أصلها إيه، بس طالما in Indian English they use it, so I think that it comes from this place. So these are all different Englishes. So if I ask you how many Englishes are there in the world, you may be surprised that we can't count the number of Englishes. So many Englishes. You will find Englishes used in globally. Every country has its own English, even if it is not its official language. We have Egyptian English. Also there are Australian English, Indian English. Everywhere English is used either as a first language, a second language, or a foreign language like here in Egypt. We find that it is used differently. It has its own flavor that makes it different from standard English that we aspire to, whether Queen's English or RP English in Britain, or general American English, which is the most prestigious accent in America. So how many Englishes? Countless, infinite. Yeah, infinite. And if you look at my English, for example, at the individual level, my English is different from my brother's English, my son's English, your English, and so on. So variation is beyond limits. Variation is touching so many things, and this is why we have to study this variation, and we have to many sciences, many linguistic disciplines study variation. We have dialectology, which is study how language varies, and we have different dialects. We have sociolinguistics talking about why dialects appear and why language use varies from one social class to another class, and when also does this happen, and the relationship between language and gender, male female differences, and language and sex, how sexism is being communicated through language, and so on. And let's go to another point here. What I want you to pay attention to is how to differentiate between accents, variation in terms of pronunciation, and dialects, variation in terms of three main elements: grammar, vocabulary, and pronunciation. If you look at the following example, and you'll find these examples on page 53 and the bottom page 52. Here we have some examples which illustrate differences in pronunciation. For example, number one, farther and father. In some accents, they are pronounced the same. For example, father and father. In Southern British English, RP, it's not rhotic. R is not pronounced after vowels. In other areas, no, they pronounce R. So in American English, they say farther and with the R, and they say father. Two different words. Okay. I just want to assure you that I'm gonna finish. I'm looking at your comments, and I gonna assure you that I'm gonna finish as quickly as possible. So if you look at the examples on page 52 and 53, you find that some words may be pronounced similarly and in some areas and differently in other areas. If you look at the second example, third example, number 3, cat and cat. In American English, they are pronounced the same, cat. In British English, they are different, coat and coat, Okay, in American English, cat, both, cat. If you look at number 4, they are pronounced also the same in both American English and British English. So they say horse, and horse. This is American with the R. If you want to use British English, say horse and horse without the R. And if you look at number 5, we find that stir and stirrer, in some areas they are spoken the same. Look at pour. Okay, look at pour. Yeah, here. Look at pour. Yes, boar and boar in British, and in American it's boar, pour, spoken the same. One final example is due, British, due, and do, with the ya here, ya. Due and do. In American English, ya is not there, so we have do and do. These are some differences. And we can find these differences everywhere. They are not restricted to English, any language. And this is something very healthy, because as I told you before, if language stops changing, this means that it is dying. And variation is something we have to celebrate, and we have to be happy about, and we have to protect. In Britain, for example, there are societies, جمعيات, that are fighting in order to protect these dialects and to keep them, preserve them, because they have to do with keeping the identity of its speakers. So if you lose your dialect or your accent, this part of your identity, this is an indicator of your identity. Okay, then we move to another element, social variation. Okay, social variation. Okay, and in social variation, language use differs from one class to another, and also differs from one context to another. Okay, let me tell you that middle class speakers, as you know, speak differently from lower class speakers. And also, you look at yourself And you can liken language to clothes. If you suppose that you want to go to a party or to a wedding party, you will put on some clothes that fits the occasion. The same thing happens when we use language. It has different styles. We have formal style, informal style, casual style, shabby style in language. We have also vulgar style, um, and so on. So language looks like your clothes. You pick what is suitable for a particular occasion, just like how you get dressed and so on. So social class, number 2, context, and number 3, medium of expression. Medium of expression. And what's medium of expression? Okay. What's medium of expression? What is the medium? Medium here refers to whether it's spoken language, you communicate using spoken language, or you communicate using written language or sign language and so on. If you compare your written language with spoken language, you will find that they are different. They are not the same. So variation here is determined by social class or social position, number 2, context, and number 3, medium of expression. Okay, let me move to here. Let me move to another position, which is on page 55, studying variation. We have something called dialectology. Dialectology. Yeah, dialectology. This is a science which studies dialects. How can we study dialects? According to dialectology, we look at its variation with regard to place. With regard to place, to place. And we have 2 important things here: word maps and isoglossals. Word maps and isoglossals. Let me show you how these 2 terms are illustrated in the following pages. Move on to page 56. Page 56 and page 57. Please have a look at figure number 4.1. Here you find the word girl, and what are the synonyms or variation of the word girl in England. In England, you find that girl is used around London, southern Britain or southern England. Why? Because this is a place where we have power, we have social power, we have political power, we have culture power. London is the capital, and usually capital is the place where culture is flourished and politics is exercised, and so on, and also education institutions are located there. So here we have girl. If you look to the north, you'll find this word, which is girl, is replaced by another word which is lass. If you go to the west, you will find wench. Also, it means a girl. If you go to the east, you find mother, which also means girl. But this is how people refer to girl in this place. If you go to the western area, you'll find maiden. All these words mean girl. Let me, as in Egyptian Arabic, for example, in Egyptian Arabic, we have many words referring to girl. In some areas they say bint, in some areas they say bit, and some areas they say be, and in some areas Habiba, they say Habiba. I don't know exactly. Would you please tell me what is the name of girl in your area? You tell me and write to me. This will be very interesting. Okay, and here you find this is a word map, and the areas are defined by something called isoglosses, which are the boundaries that are setting areas apart from one another. Okay, setting areas apart from one another. If you look, it's the same thing also we have on page 57, and this is in Eastern America, and the word dragonfly, this is an insect. Look at how people give this insect names in America. The circle, the place where the circle is used, this they give it the name, which is darning needle. The places where the triangle is used, it's called mosquito hawk. The places where the dotted or the black circle is used, they call it spider. And the place where the triangle, the anti-triangle is used, they call it snake doctor. And finally we have snake wader. So these are different words for the same insect, okay? This is called word. I personally have conducted a study on Egyptian Arabic used in Kafr Sheikh, and I did the same using word maps and isoclasses. For example, we want to know where people say hufra and where do they say fuhra, and we made word maps like that. Where do people use vanilla and where do they say falenna, and so on. Where do they say forn with the re, with the r, and where do they say fun? Where do they say yom, and where do they say yaum or yam, bait and debate, bite and all these things. Very interesting. I'm gonna send you a link to this study to go through it. Okay. On page 57 we have Trudgill, Peter Trudgill. This is a very famous sociolinguist, Peter Trudgill, and he administered his studies in Norwich. Don't say Norwich, no, it's Norwich in England. What does he do? What does Trudgill do? Okay, go to page 58. Okay, the guy has collected number one. Look at the steps. Number one, he collected a number of Norwich speakers from different social backgrounds. Okay. Number two, he asked them to speak or to write. To read aloud a number of words. For example, casual speech, how they speak casually, how they speak informally, how they speak formally, how they speak, let's say, how they read out a passage speech. He gives them a passage and asks them to read it aloud. And also, آخر حاجة بقى, he gives them a list of words and he asks them to read these lists. Let's see the symbols, okay, to make it clear. CS means casual speech, informal speech. Number 2, FS means formal speech. Number 3, RBS means reading passage speech. And then finally آخر حاجة number 4 بقى word list speech, which is WLS. So these are the categories of or different kinds of speech the guy has collected from speakers of different social classes in his city or in his village or his place knowledge. طب عمل ايه بعد كده؟ Okay, he tape recorded these different kinds of speech in order to see whether they say, let's say, swimming with the ga, swimming, or swimming, يعني do they say in or in بس, okay, without ga, okay, and he classified those people into 5 social classes or social categories. زي ما احنا شايفين كده في الشكل تحت. We have LWC lower working class, اطلع فوق. Middle working class MWC, UWC upper working class, and then we have lower middle class LMC and middle class MMC. Okay, what are the results? Look at the graph. The graph illustrates that the people in Norwich are using the N form without ing. Okay, swimming. Okay, in informal situations, in casual speech, and also there is a correlation between social class and the use of N form. Lower class speakers use N form. They say swimming. Upper class or middle class speakers, they say swimming. You understand? So he concluded that there is a relationship between social class and prestige, or language and prestige, because swimming is less prestigious than swimming with the ga. Understand? And as long as lower class people use women, so they find it okay, they like it or they are used to it, and so on. So he finds some sort of correlation between social class and the use of the IN form, not the ING form. Lower classes use IN form, whereas upper classes or upper sections or stratifications, they use ING form. This is called social stratification. Okay, hope that this graph is understood, and the experiment or the study, the empirical study Trudgill has conducted, which is very famous in sociolinguistics literature, is being clear in your mind, and see the correlation between social class and the use of some speech forms. Now let's go to on the same page 59. We have language and identity, or identity depends. Okay, we know that language is the first indicator of your identity. It suffices to see that once you open your mouth and you speak, your first words illustrate so many things about you, about your gender, about your social class, about your educational background, about your occupational status, and so many things. This is very clear to everyone. Here I want to pay your attention to a very important couple of terms. Here, language and identity, we have overt prestige and covered prestige. Overt prestige and covered prestige. Okay, and this will be discussed on page 60. Okay, overt versus covered. Okay, overt prestige is the when you use speech forms which are used by upper class speakers, powerful, socially powerful speakers, people who are in higher positions in the society. If you copy their speech, this means that you are aspiring for a sort of prestige called overt prestige, because this is the mainstream. Everyone aspires to speak like the rich people, like the royal family, for example, like the upper class, the highly educated people, and so on. This is overt prestige. Okay? Second, and let me also talk about this. If you are, for example, speaking a regional dialect and you want to speak Korean Arabic, Korean Egyptian Arabic, so you quit your dialect of your father and mother, and you adopt a new one, which is Korean. Why? Because you want to say that I don't want to belong to the people who speak the regional dialect. I want to belong to the Korean community, maybe because I will find some social privileges, maybe because I want to climb the social ladder, and I find that the dialects of my parents hold me back and deprive me from social privileges. So you decide to be a member of new community, the community of people who speak the standard or the prestigious accent. In Egypt, we have Korean Egyptian Arabic, and not only Korean, because in some areas Korean dialects, as we see in some slum areas and so on, is not so prestigious and so on. The second kind of prestige is the covered, the عكسه, covered prestige. What's covered prestige? It is the opposite. It's the opposite. If you are living and you have been brought up in a place using or speaking a regional dialect, a non-standard dialect or a non-standard accent, okay, and you find that okay, you like this and you want to stick to this dialect, maybe because this gives you some privileges. And let me give you an example. We have Angela Ray. This is the education minister in Labour Party shadow government, and she was bullied by her due to her accent. She was bullied because she comes from northern England and she speaks northern English. And you know that London is in the south, and southern English is more prestigious than northern English. And she said, no, I'm not going to change my accent. I'm not going to change at all. And I will keep my accent and will continue to use it. This is part of who am I. This is part of my identity, and this is part of my history and my legacy. And I am belonging to the people in the north, and I want to continue belonging to this place. So she seeks not overt prestige in London and the accent in London and so on. No, she wants to stick to her northern dialect because it's sort of covered prestige. And what are the privileges? Why? Maybe because she wants to be close to her, to the people who voted for her in election, to her constituency members, If she shifts or shifted to another accent, people will not believe in her and maybe underrate her or say that she's not authentic, she's not genuine, she is not belonging to us. So why do we vote for her? You know, these are all reasons. You know. Anyway, covered prestige is something people who are speaking substandard things which are local, you know, not prestigious forms. They stick to this. They do not change. They want to be as they are. They don't want to quit their dialect. النوع ده بنسميه covered prestige. Covered prestige. You understand? Covered prestige. Okay, and you may wonder. You may wonder that in some and one of my colleagues actually told me that in wealthy areas in Cairo, girls are, you know, try to copy the accent of their counterparts in slum areas and in lower classes, speakers of lower classes, and they find this very trendy, very fashionable, and gives them some power and so on. They use vulgar language. بنات في أماكن كويسة جدا بيستخدموا لغة العشوائيات, and they feel that it's a sort of revolution against the status quo, against what's called linguistic etiquette. They want to be different. They want to be different, even if they are shifting to a lower class kind of speech. Something, and this explains. You can say that this explains why mahraganat music, for example, as a genre of music, which is called street music, is so common and is gaining momentum and social acceptance day after day. Go to any wedding party, you'll find that all the songs belonging to this genre are being played, and people have fun and they enjoy it. Whether this wedding party is in a 5-star hotel or 7-star hotel or in a slum area. And this is why people who are against this sort of music, I say to them, you know, let people try. This is part of language change, just part of language variation. And by the way, this is a trend that is going viral everywhere in the world. Everywhere in the world, by the way. You know, they say the under, you know, the inner city music of slum areas and music of minority groups, and they are gaining a momentum and social acceptability, social acceptance. This is something so weird, but you know, this is what's happening. This is what's happening. It depends on, you know, the word prestige and prestigious speech or prestigious speech is defined by people differently, and they have every right to decide for themselves what is prestigious and what's not prestigious, you know. Then we move to language, sex and gender. بخلص اهو مش هغيب عليكم. Language, sex and gender. Language, sex and gender. Language, sex and gender. Yes, and this directly makes us move to women's language. Yeah, women's language. Women's language. Do women speak differently from men? Yes. To some extent. Yes. Do all people speak differently from young people? Yes. Do let's say uh, highly educated people speak differently from illiterate people? Yes. Okay. But here, let's look at women's language, and I ask you to go with me to page 61. You got it? Got it? Okay. Yes. Um, Here we have a list of uh, features uh, which define women's language. Let's check them and see if these features are still holding, still there, or things change. Okay. Um, okay. First of all, they find that women speak more about children and about clothes more than uh, men, and this is natural because women are the first caregivers. The first caregivers, and it's very natural. Okay, and let's look at number one. Women are said to make frequent use of a number of admiring terms rarely used by men: divine, cute, adorable, thrilling, and others. They say that women use these adjectives more. Okay. Number two. Do you feel? Do you think so? Do you think that women use these these examples or these adjectives more in Egyptian Arabic? Please check for yourself. Number two, women are said to make finer discriminations than men in certain areas, such as color terms. Yes, definitely. Yes, women are very, competent in this area, in giving different names for different shades of the same color and so on. Number three, wear much more than women. Do you think that men swear more than women? Use filthy language, bad language, vulgar language, impolite language than women? Maybe in the past. Because personally, when I go to my office, I use the stairs. I don't use the elevator, and I am surprised by the quality of language young girls or young women use. Female students use. They use vulgar language. They use bad language. They swear. بيشتموا. They swear, and I don't know why. Maybe it's fashion. Maybe it's fashion. The prototype of a girl is that she should be so polite, so cute, and so on. Maybe they want to make a revolution against all these things, and to say, no, we are equal with the other gender, and since men are swearing, why not do we swear? So let's swear, also swear just like men. It's gender equality. Of course, this is something which is very, puzzling, and it needs further studies. It needs further studies. Number four, women are said to use more tech questions. And they say that this is because she's not so certain. She doesn't have solid point of view. She seeks confirmation from others. She's not that powerful as men. فسروها بالشكل ده. Number five, men interrupt far more than women. Women are good listeners. They listen. Okay, men interrupt far more than women. Maybe, and they explain this as because women are weak and they listen to the strong, the powerful men. They obey, they listen and obey. They listen and obey. This is how they interpret this finding. Do you think so? Do you feel that it's still the same? Okay. Number 6, women use more baby talk than men. Baby talk than men. I think this is very justifiable. As I told you, this women are the first caregivers. And number 7, generally women's discourse is cooperative. Well done. Cooperative. Yes. We give the other part or the other party in conversations a chance to continue and to communicate your thought. We do not interrupt so much. We are cooperative. We encourage people to talk and to express themselves freely. Number 8, finally, women are more likely, more than men of the same social group, to use overt prestige. Women do not use covert prestige. They use overt, mainstream. The speech, they adopt the speech of the powerful groups. The prestige of the upper classes. They don't risk using covered prestige and stick to the dialect of their parents. Okay, and they aspire to social mobility and to social gains, because language is one of the tools that can help you get social gains. Social gains. People who are competent and they know how to speak and they have fluency and they are competent and so on, they have better social opportunities than people who do not have this competence and they don't have this fluency and they are not able to express themselves in a good way and in a powerful way. Okay. Here on page 62 we have something called sexist language. For example, the word nurse. If I ask you what comes to your mind when the word nurse is mentioned, you will say a girl or a female. Another thing, if I say firefighter, what comes to your mind, male or female? Usually male. But this is not the case. We have male nurses and we have female firefighters. So this is called sexism, sexism. Using language in order to determine the sex of a particular profession and so on. Finally, live with two languages. And this is bilingualism. Bilingualism, minority language and immigrant languages. Okay, but bilingualism, we have many communities where we have one language, two languages, three languages, four languages, and even 5 and 7 languages spoken in the same community. Okay, and children in these communities, they learn how to speak all these languages very competently and very easily, and you may wonder, how does this happen? Okay, and let me tell you that just as when you speak Arabic or differently when you talk to your father and then you talk to your professor, or you talk to your boss in a job, or you talk to someone who is below you, inferior than you, or you talk to your colleague. So these are different styles. Yeah, they are different styles of the same language. But if you look at children learning many languages at the same time in some communities, they look at these dialects as you look at the styles of the same language. They acquire these languages very easily. Okay, look at the second term at the bottom of the page, which is minority language. Minority language. Okay, you will find in many places in the world minorities have their own languages, but unfortunately, these minorities are forced to give up their languages and to use the official language of the majority, the powerful. And this leads to the death of many indigenous languages worldwide. People give up their language. They are forced to leave their language, to quit their language, because they are not the majority, they are the minority. Okay? And this is a glaring loss for humanity, because diversity is very essential for us. And every language is a sort of window to the world. Yeah, it's a window to the world. So if any language dies out, this means that humanity loses a window to see the world and to see reality, which is so regrettable, something we really have to fight against. Everyone's language should be respected, and everyone's language should be protected by law, and everyone should be given the chance to use his language and pass it to the next generations. And we want people to fight against what we call language shaming. There is no, as I told you before, linguistic chauvinism, which is that some languages are superior than other languages. This is a myth. It's not acceptable. Okay? And we should respect all languages. They are equal, standing on equal footing. Okay? Finally, I have another term, which is immigrant languages. You know, we are living in a world where migration is a very key, mark in today's world. People migrate from one place to another in order to search for better chances and better future. And they bring with them, when they travel or they move to another place, they bring with them their languages. So in Britain, for example, you will find the immigrants who go to Britain or to America, they bring with them their languages. And this changes the landscape, the linguistic landscape in Britain. So even this changes the English language itself. For example, the Indian communities living in Britain, they developed a sort of English called Hinglish. It's a mix between Hindi and English. And it was very surprising for me to read a story that white British people who are British, okay, descending from British families, they go to take courses in English, not in British English, no, in English, in order to look for jobs in India. So English, which is a mix between English and Indian, okay, is being taught on the British soil itself. يعني في إنجلترا نفسها وعلى الأرض البريطانية they teach English. Imagine, English is changing rapidly and dramatically due to the influence of the immigrant languages. And we have to wait and see how things will go in the future. That's it for today. Hope that you understand the main ideas. We discussed variation in language in terms of place, in terms of social class, and also we talked about dialectology. We talked about accent and dialects, how to differentiate between them. We talked about overt prestige and covert prestige and the relationship between language and identity. And also we covered or touched upon some points such as the relationship between language and gender and sex and bilingualism, immigrant languages and minority languages. Thank you. I just want you to think of these issues that we discussed today. And one last thing I want you to pay attention to is that let's celebrate diversity. Let's encourage diversity in language. Linguistic diversity is a treasure to all of us. And let's respect our dialects and respect our accents, our father's dialects and our mother's dialects, our parents and grandparents. Okay? Also, let me give you one last thing, or something called dialect nostalgia. And it talks about people who in their in their 20s and 30s, they quit their fathers or their parents' dialects in order to adopt the dialect of the mainstream, the dialect of the powerful people, and the standard dialect, and so on. And after they grow up and they become 60 or 70 and so on, and after retirement, they found themselves longing back to for their parent dialect, which is called dialect nostalgia. Dialect nostalgia, al-hanin, dialect nostalgia. So after all these years and after quitting their parents' dialect, they go back to it because this is part of their identity. Enjoy your dialect, enjoy your accent, and respect everyone's accent and everyone's dialect. Let's enjoy language in all its forms. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.